tell me if this sounds familiar. Tell me if you grew up with a similar story. So this is going to read like the tale of two cities, right? I'm going to present a scenario one and scenario two, and then we'll just kind of let them sit by aside one another. So this is the story that I grew up. It said that nature is the rocks and the rainbows and the sticks and the plants and the trees and the rivers and the sky and quote, man-made objects were not part of nature. Those were man-made objects. And what's more, that we humans were a bit outside the fold of nature, that we occupy a kind of, we're the exception to the rule. And in some ways, we have an exceptional, say intellect or imagination, really. And, but that we were removed or outside the fold of nature. And what's more, God gave us dominion over the earth. And that's what made us so separate and special. And finally, that consciousness is a product of matter. Consciousness arises from material chemistry, your brain, your nervous system, and that's the origin of consciousness and awareness. Okay. So does that sound familiar? Did you grow up with some parallel understanding? And now here's the yoga version of that story. And I find it like a very different paradigm to come, like there's a very different set of assumptions for how we see the world and how we see self and how we navigate this place and how we determine what's really important and where we invest our energy is like there's a whole different event horizon around those things. In either one of those stories. But here's the yoga version of all that. It's just to say, number one, the catchword for nature is prakriti, which means the nature principle or the matter principle. And nature, in this model, nature is not confined to the rocks and the sticks and the birds and the trees and the leaves, but nature is essentially anything that moves or changes. Anything that moves or changes. So, this environment we're in the city is full of movement and change and transformation. And this body is imbued with the same characteristic of change and transformation. And certainly this mind is imbued with change and transformation. And all the reach of nature, whether it's gross and dense and material, or very subtle and rarefied and fine and even invisible, is vast. The hand of nature is immense. It's not just the things that we can control, right? In fact, the great majority of nature is way beyond our control. And what's more, that consciousness pervades all of nature. It's something of animating intelligence that imbues life with life, or the ability for awareness to exist here, and the ability for intelligence to take form. It's a bit like, analogy might be something like the sun and the earth, in that the sun is shining wholly, say singularly, not it is technically changing, but for the sake of metaphor, it's just shining its kind of radiant nature. And those rays then strike the earth. And we're in such proximity that all this like amazing life then emerges out of that singular energy and animates weather patterns and cycles of seasons and rise and fall of tides and migration of birds. And all of it is in no small part directly in relationship to the shining light of the sun. And our mental space picks up the light of consciousness as well, and then formulates and shapes it in the form of this personality and these desires and whatnot, right? Like we're just not just, but a kind of finite encapsulation of awareness or consciousness that has a singular origin, and a singular origin is shining through all of life. And the namesake of that is Purush. The name is Purush. And the yoga orientation, largely, and there's different versions of at this part in the story, but a common theme in yoga practice is to settle the fluctuations, the particular turnings of your mental space, or bring some rhythm to your life circumstance, such that the light of Purush, pure awareness, shines through more directly or more clearly or more recognizably or more wholly or more singularly, right? And this is largely where meditative practice comes in, to like again and again and again return to a kind of focusing of the mental space back unto its origin. The mind receives awareness is reflected in the mind. It's not the source of awareness, right? And fundamentally, we might call this like something of a dance between Prakriti, changing energies, and Purush, singular awareness energy. And life is very much like a melded dance of these forces. And to begin to, at least in a Raj Hatha Yoga context, begin to slowly tease them apart, and we can then have a clear view on, or an ultimate view on reality, basically. Not conditioned reality, not finite reality, not segmented reality, not relative or subjective reality, but like whole reality. Yeah. And that's, well, earlier I was saying, good job, you got through the door, you want to improve yourself. Like that's where most of us may lie. Fewer people are interested in like that big picture stuff that I just named. But as a yoga teacher, it is my duty to kind of give you the full story, and you can continue to braille your way into fullness in whatever manner you choose. I'm here to offer some techniques and perspective.